Welcome to the Courageous Living Podcast, where we learn to exchange our struggles for strength and embrace courage as a lifestyle. I'm your host, Courage Molina, author of Power Principles, Courageous Living, How I Overcame Depression, Saved My Marriage, and Took Back My Life. What's up, y'all? I am so excited to be back with you. Episode 26 was good. And as I promised, I have another amazing guest on the podcast. Let me give you her bio. I really am not doing her bio justice, but I do want to respect your time and not take the entire hour telling you how awesome she is. She is a wife, a mother, and just an all-around boss type chick, CEO. She and her husband make up this dynamic photography partnership called Ike and Tash. She is the creator of the Street Team and her organization Blink Conference, and she has really experienced some things that sound like a complete and utter fairy tale or something that you might see on Grey's Anatomy. Please, I hope that you guys will love her as much as I do. Miss Tash of Ike and Tash.
Hey, so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. I have to preface, like, I have a little bit of a cold, so I might be like coughing, but I think we've all been there, so hopefully there'll be grace for my little lung that's coming up.
I am excited that you decided to come on, even though you're coughing, that you are pushing through. So I appreciate that. So I met Tasha a few weeks ago, maybe like a month or so ago. She was here in Charlotte. She was out in Washington. She's in Charlotte. She did a live in Charlotte. I've listened to the live from the Academy, which I don't make it a habit of logging into Facebook while I'm teaching, but maybe it was during like a planning period. I'm not sure. And my girls listened to her entire story as she shared it. They were so excited. We were excited about it. I was messaging like, hey, it would be great, to connect with you. And then lo and behold, she is ringing the doorbell. She is at the Academy. It was so exciting.
I was like, wait, oh my goodness, we're here like right now. Wow.
It was so great. My girls absolutely loved it. Being able to meet you in person and then hearing your story and just your energy. And from that, I have completely become a fan. And so I am really going to try to keep it together on this podcast, y'all. But I'm completely geeked out, if I'm going to be honest. As I prepare for this podcast, like trying to figure out which way is this going to go, how am I going to ask her these questions, I still came up with nothing, honestly. So I'm sure it's going to work out well. Don't worry, because she is just full of wisdom and just nuggets and experiences. We're just going to let her bless us however she sees fit today. So let's get to it. So can you tell us about all this awesome stuff you're doing? Let's start with the Street Team.
Okay. Well, so I have this rule that like anything that I do or take on, like I have to be super excited about, because we all have like enough things in our life that we have to do because we have to do them. So anything extra that I invest my time in, it has to be something that I just like love or that plays to like my gifts and my strengths. So we have this thing called a Street Team, and it really is our marketing move for high school seniors. My husband and I, as Courage says, we run a photography company. And so we shoot weddings and families and high school seniors, but it's a little tougher to reach the millennials because they aren't always out in like the traditional places that we would be at. Skating rinks or bowling, like these are not the kids that like hang out in public. They all are behind their phones on a couch somewhere. So when we started shooting seniors, it was really hard to figure out how to get to them, how to market to them. And so we thought of hip hop and how, back in like the 80s, the 90s, the record companies would find young people this was like influencers before like this idea of quote unquote influencers on social media, but like the real influencers who were out in the streets that knew like where all the connects were, where all the underground hangouts were, record companies would give these people like tickets to different shows that you would have to know someone to get into. And in return for that, you know, bringing kind of attention to this new artist or this new spot or whatever, they would give them tickets and different things like that. And so we borrowed that idea and created this street team for our business where the young people would go into their schools or go into the places where they hang out, and they would bring our brand or our ideas for our company to the people, their friends. And in exchange, we would provide them with really fun experiences, photo shoots, things like that. Initially, it was just kind of like you promote my business and we'll do photo shoots. But I was running a camp with my sister, and it was this camp for girls where it was a spiritually based camp where we would have these really amazing encounters with God. And the last camp that I did with her, I heard God say, like, you wait every year to pour your gifts out to these girls who don't live in your community, and you give them the very best that you have. But you have girls in front of you every single day that you're not giving that same energy to.
Wow.
And so when I came home, I started really like taking that thing to the next level. And so what was a street team or a senior model program now has become like a little sorority. And I have enough friends who are in sororities that I kind of understand the concept of like a sorority and the value that it creates in terms of sisterhood. So we started to kind of create different opportunities for our girls. Like we kind of turned our street team from a marketing thing into a mentoring thing.
Wow.
And we are in our 8th year of working with high school girls. We choose 16 every year, 16 to 17. We've been doing this since 2011. So we just picked our 8th group of girls. And so we've served in our community about 250 girls, like exclusively, like hands on every day, touched in with girls. But then on kind of the perimeter of those girls, we have also created opportunities for other girls to be a part of what we do without being on our street team. We've opened up our home for monthly Sunday dinners for any high school girl who wants to connect. And the first time we did that, we had like 87 girls show up to our house.
Oh, wow.
So we decided that there was a need in our community for girls to connect with one another in like a like-minded way. So in 2016, I was fasting, and I had shingles at the time, which is like a really random thing, but it sat me down long enough for God to speak to me again. And he gave me this idea of creating a service club for girls that's led by girls. And so we started this and her is our service club. And the girls, we chose ambassadors for that. And those girls lead and curate activities for girls in our region, basically from Seattle to Olympia, Gig Harbor to Tacoma. And we do like monthly events, community service, leadership development, peer mentorship, and sisterhood based events. And that has been really amazing. And the girls have done really incredible things. And we've partnered with like local organizations, doing like homeless stores, building playgrounds, just doing all kinds of stuff. And what I've seen is that young people really want an opportunity to serve their community. There's just not always a space for them to do it. And their voice isn't valued. And so we've just created space for that. And so it's just like a fun little like mission-based project that's connected to our business that started with money in mind, but really transitioned to more of heart work and heart mission. So that is what the street team is and what And Her is, in a very quick synopsis, I suppose.
No, I love it. What I love about it is that even though it initially started out as marketing, that once you saw a need, you didn't say, well, that's not really what I'm doing here. And I think a lot of times organizations and individuals, we set out to do something, we have a purpose, and it's an okay purpose. It's valid. It's fine for us to go out and make money. But then we see a need and we don't allow for us to take a detour and maybe mentor or bring someone along or serve if it wasn't in alignment with our original plan. And so I love that you were really open to the prompting of the Spirit of God and to the opportunity that was in front of you, and that you didn't just say, well, that's not really my thing. So, I hope somebody else helps them out. I love that you saw a need, you filled a need. I say this all the time. If you see the problem and you have the ability, the resources, and the time and the skill to fill it, then it is your assignment. People are often trying to figure out, oh, what's my assignment? They think that they're going to find it on the other side of the world, or they don't know where it is. And a lot of times it's right in front of them. It's a problem that you've seen. It's a need that you've noticed,
So good.
and
Yeah.
you have the ability to fill that need, even if it's on a small scale. I definitely didn't expect for you to say 80 plus girls showed up to your house for Sunday dinner. And you, and you probably didn't expect for 80. So you're probably thinking, oh, maybe we'll get 20. And that response just goes to show you, like you said, how needed it is. And I love that you were open to that. And I hope that more people start to be open to that. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Did you think about
Okay.
did you think about not doing another Sunday dinner? Because I know you must have had some number in your head, like, oh, maybe there'll be 30 or maybe there'll be 40. When you saw that there were 87, did you not get overwhelmed and think, you know what? I was just kidding.
No, oh my gosh, I loved it. I think that young people vote with their feet. And so when 87 people come knocking at your door between the ages of 15 to 17, I think that says a lot about who you are and like the impact that you can have. Like, I think what I did was go, wow, we're two photographers. Like, we're not connected to a church, we're not connected to a school. And these young people think enough of us that they want to come and share a meal with us. And my initial thought was like, where can we really take this? And why do we have this kind of influence? And what are we supposed to do with it? And so that was kind of my thought process about it more than anything. Like, why us? And what are we supposed to do with this? And so I just started to kind of consecrate myself to try to hear what the answer was. And that's where the service club came out of that. I think like initially we always kind of have our own ideas about how we want things to go. But I think sometimes like those ideas are usually just like little tiny blueprints for like the bigger picture if we're open to it and if we're willing to receive it. And as much as making money is important, I know that my job on earth and our job on earth is to serve people and to love people. And so if we can do it in a way that's fun for us, like hanging out with a bunch of high school kids, it sounds like a party to me. But I'm also a person who I'm like Peter Pan, like I'm not trying to grow up like ever. So for me, it's just such a beautiful space to be in. And anytime a young person shows up at my door and wants to talk to myself or wants to talk to Ike or just wants to hang out at our house, I think it's like the biggest stamp of approval for the kind of space that we're creating. Because young people, they don't lean in,
Yeah.
they lean out. And so when they feel like they found a safe place, like you open the door and you let them in, you know?
That's
That's
so
my thought about
inspiring.
it.
I've been in the high school classroom for 11 years. And when I left the classroom last year, I was like, okay, I love you guys, but I'm so done with students. I just, I'm going to work with women, and this is where I feel like I'm being led. And so I've kind of pursued that some, but I'm on this panel, and we went to this college campus to do this panel discussion on body confidence. And listen, when I tell you, did you see that? It was with Alicia. It was with Moss Girls, Body Confidence. Yes.
Yeah, I saw
Yes.
that
So I'm a
line.
part of
Yeah.
that panel. And so that was our first time at a college campus. Listen, that was so everything. The energy, like my heart was just so full. And when we were done, I told Alicia, I said, you know what? I'm breaking up with women. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I like them. And I have this thing, this heart for them. I'm like, but I really feel this calling. Like, this is my place with these young people. And she's like, yeah, you definitely speak their language and you wear their clothes. And I was there in a pair of hot top Vans and jeans. Like, I go everywhere in hot top Vans and jeans. She was like, you don't have heels? I'm like, no, this is good. And just like being with them, their energy, and they also have like this great need for guidance and love, and they're just and mentorship. Yes. And I love every second of it. I was like, oh, this is it. I'm like, this is the spot. I found my safe spot.
It's so funny because I've been reading so much in the Bible about women who like mentored younger women. Like that was a thing. Like that was the way the world was set up. Um, like you can see it in so many relationships in the Bible where women like they brought a younger woman along with them and they helped them and they poured into them. And then the younger woman was there to keep company and to also support and help. And I don't think there's enough of that happening. And I think that our world is so desperate for that connection and that mentorship. And so I feel like if your heart swells when you're in those spaces, you absolutely are meant to do it. And I feel that way. I get so much life from being in a room full of young people, not little baby kids. Like, I'm good. Like, kids that are like 5, 6, 7, 8, no, thank you, I'm good. But when you start hitting like that 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, early 20s, I'm like, bring them on. I'll take them all, give them
Yes,
all
I'm
to
with
me.
you.
So
I am with you. What about the
you found your calling last
listen?
week, huh?
I kept saying this is it. I've said it 100 times since the panel, 100 times, and I've reached out to some of my students. Shout out to my boy Zengram at App State and my college bestie Paige at North Carolina A&T and Amber over at ECU. I love y'all. I reached out to them. I taught them for 4 years before they graduated, and I'm like, hey, I think I want to be on the college campus. What do y'all think? They're like, yes, come here. We love you. What can we do? How can we help?
Yes.
So I'm ready. I'm like planning my college tour, right? Literally planning my college tour right now. I'm not even kidding. So I'm with you. I absolutely love it. So tell me about this Blink conference.
Yeah, so Blink is a photography conference that we started back in 2013. Um, I had been really frustrated with our creative industry just as a whole. It was very hard to find representation. There was like none at that time. And I so desperately wanted to teach and to speak because I knew that that was something that was inside of me. But I had the hardest time finding spaces where I was allowed to do that. And so I would, ask to speak at conferences and they'd be like, you have to have experience. And I'm like, well, I can't get experience because nobody will let me speak. So it was catch 22. And then I would be watching like these online like summits and go to these conferences, and all the flyers were filled with basically there was no diversity at all. None. Like you could not find anything that even directly let me know that I was welcome or there was a space for me. And as an attendee, many times I was the only of color person in the room, not the only Black person, but the only of color person. And so it's very frustrating to kind of get used to walking into a space and always being the one. I feel like there's, a luxury when people are like, well, I don't see color. And I'm like, yeah, well, you don't have to. Like, it's not, that's a part of like the privilege, but like, that's how it felt in my industry. It was like, everyone was like, oh, we love you so much. We don't see color. But I'm like, well, you don't have to because everything is homogenized and it's set up to suit you. And so just after just being so just disenchanted by that and so frustrated by it, I was complaining to Ike and complaining to my sister, and they both were kind of like, are you going to complain or are you going to do something? And so my sister kind of knows that if you want to get me kind of frustrated and get me to move, you got to challenge me to do something. And so she was just like, I think you should do your own thing. And I'm like, wait, what? She's like, you should do your own thing. And I'm telling you, from the moment she said that, 7 days later, I had a whole conference planned. And it was very intentional, and the lineup was very intentional. And the hope was to see more people of color in educational spaces in the photography industry. And so I am like super proud to say that I do believe that we had the most diverse conference in the industry, both in terms of educators, in terms of education, like the topics that we provided, as well as like our attendee base. It was so diverse and so incredible. And why I'm talking about it in past tense is because the year before I went into heart failure, which was 2016, the Lord told me that I needed to set Blink down. And I didn't really understand like why. I just knew that it was time for us. I didn't feel like he was saying like I needed to stop, but it was just time to maybe put it on hold. So we had one more conference left and we're really struggling with where to put it. The conference was going to be in 2017. And I struggled for like months trying to figure out where to have the conference. And a month before conference, I heard in my spirit Seattle. And I was like, Seattle? Nobody wants to come to Seattle. But that was the only, I don't move on anything if I don't have peace. And that was the only location that I had complete peace about. Even though I was terrified about having it in Seattle because the weather in November in Seattle is not good. And we had been at all of these really amazing places, Nashville, Palm Springs, Scottsdale, Arizona, Austin, Texas, like places that people want to go on vacation in the wintertime, not Seattle. But we did choose that location. We had a conference in Palm Springs in 2016, had a really tough December, fasted in January, February got sick, March went into heart failure. And so 2017 was very, very tough for me. Had I not chosen Seattle as the location for the conference, I know we would not have been able to pull it off. And God really just shifted things in my heart and in my mind. And so knowing that that was our last event was just really so perfect as I was trying to heal and make it through. And honestly, I don't know how we pulled off Blink 2017 with everything that we went through. We were out of work for 7 months. And I didn't walk for a lot of that time and went through basically literal hell. But we were able to pull off a really amazing event and we were able to put our conference on pause in a really high place. So we don't have plans to reconvene Blink at the moment just because I feel like we're being called into kind of other seasons of life, but I don't believe that it's over. So I think at some point we'll come back to it, but it was a really beautiful space. And we had like 100 and about 50 attendees every year with like 25 speakers. And it was a really fun, amazing time full of community, which was the main focus for me. Creating a space where people felt like no matter their gender, their sexuality, their race, their religious preference, that there was a space for them where they could just come and be creative and learn and feel safe. And so I think that we achieved that. And if it's done, then that's fine. And if it's not, then we'll be ready when it's time to race to the starting line again.
There's so many things that you said. I'm like writing like a crazy person over here. One of the things I want to say, this podcast, we're always talking about courageous living and what that means and kind of what needs to happen when you realize that God has called you to do something or God wants you to do something huge, bigger than what you are. You feel like there's a need. And it's like, okay, what do we do? What do I do? My resources aren't here. It doesn't look like it should look for me. There's no space for me. I have this thing in my heart that I want to do, but no one's inviting me in. So now what? You know what I mean? And I love that you said, well, you were challenged, but you answered the challenge. So that's good. Big ups to your family. Big ups to your family. But I love that you were just like, I can't keep waiting on an invitation. I'm going to live in the space that's mine, and I'm going to share this gift that I have. I don't need to wait. And that is so amazing, and that is so faith-filled too. I mean, just to understand that if God has put it in your heart, you have this desire for you to do it, then he is absolutely going to see it through to the end with you. You don't need to wait on an invitation.
No, and it's so true. And the best part about it, what I learned is, so in 5 years of my conference, I never spoke at it. And what I realized was that it wasn't that I wanted to speak. It was that I wanted a space where I felt accepted and I wanted to create a space for other people to feel accepted. So what started out feeling like I want a platform, I want to speak, that really wasn't actually what I was after, because I could have given myself a platform for 5 years in a row and I chose not to. It wasn't about that for me. It was about the community and creating community. And so I never actually spoke. Like, I hosted and I, introduced, and I felt the temperature of the room and kept people inspired, but I never actually felt like I needed that space. to actually have a platform. I just really wanted people to feel loved and cared on. And so over the course of those 5 years, I learned more than anything that I'm a community organizer and I believe in the power of community. And as I've taken time and stepped back, I can see that that's very true for who I am because of the communities I've created in every area of my life. It comes through with the girls. It comes through online with like the movements that I've gotten behind. It came through with our conference. It really wasn't ever about anything other than wanting people to feel like they belong somewhere. And that comes from my own upbringing. I was raised in foster care and I aged out of the system. So the day I was born to the day I aged out of the system, I was not I was not connected anywhere. I didn't have like family. And so there's this deep desire in me that makes me want to make sure that people feel like they have a place that they can belong to and that they are a part of and where they're heard and they're seen and they're valued and they're validated. And so I just kind of feel like I go around my life doing that, no matter what the space is. And so those were really important lessons for me to learn, to really understand like the thing that I was after wasn't actually the thing that I was after. And sometimes you have to step out on faith and just jump
Yes, I think a
to
lot of
figure out
times we
what that
want to
thing
see the
really is, you
bridge.
know?
We want to see how we're going to get over. We want to see how it's going to work out. We're looking for this Red Sea miracle where we can see exactly how it's going to work out. Okay, I see how this is going to work. We're going to walk across on dry land. But more times than not, when you're going towards your promise, it is a Jordan type of faith where you're not going to really see the clarity or see things move until you take that step. You know, the water's not going to start to pull back until you put your foot in the water, you know, and so I love that. Another thing I want to make sure that everybody is hearing is that we all want to feel like we belong. Everybody has that feeling. We want to belong to a tribe. We want to be able to be our authentic selves. And if you're feeling that, then guess what? Somebody else is too. And if it works for you and you feel like, oh, I might be a little bit out of place, you're not the only one feeling that way. It is so crazy. It doesn't matter what industry you're in or who you are or what you're doing. I think a lot of us kind of deal with that. I'm actually an ordained minister, and I live in the South here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And when I first started to feel God pulling me that way, I was very resistant. I was like, that is not me. I do not really fit that look. I don't belong. And I went to a few different places. I wanted to be a part of these circles because of the thing that was in my heart. I'm like, I want to share. I want to encourage. I want to empower people in the Word of God. You know, I want to take these biblical principles and show them how to apply it in a practical way. But I didn't fit. I didn't fit what was there. And for me, it wasn't because of race initially. It was because everybody wants to be in stockings and a church hat and a suit. And I think, dear God, don't make me wear pantyhose. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, please. Girl, people still wear pantyhose. I'm like,
Still
I'm
wear
sorry, you want me to wear
those?
what now? You know, I'm like, man, I want to wear hoops. I just got my hair cut in like a little mini mohawk on the side, so it's shaved on the side. I like to wear it up. Yeah, I think it's so dope. And I like hot pink
Oh,
hair and I want a tattoo and I don't want to say, hey, sweet friend. So for me, I felt like I don't sound like them. I don't have the same tone. Not even how I explain the word isn't like, I'm like, there's not a place for me, you know? And instead of sitting back on the sideline saying, well, it's not for me, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to share it the way I would share it and be authentic and believe that this is for somebody. And I was actually surprised that there were so many people who could relate and they love the delivery. And so I say that because there's somebody listening to that podcast who thinks they don't fit the industry standard. They don't look like, sound like, whatever it is they believe they should look like. And I just want to tell them, do it anyway. We are two examples of people who just did it, shared it, and
right.
you're an answer to somebody's prayer. Like somebody was so excited about the diversity that they saw at the Blink conference. You know what I mean? I hear women tell me all the time, I love that you are so authentic. I love that you sound like
No,
that
totally.
because it makes me feel like it's okay for me to come. So So you've made a couple
Right.
of
Yeah, that's
references
so good. So,
to
so good.
because there's some overlapping with the last Blink conference and the planning of that and your heart failure. So can you tell us about that? This is bananas.
Yeah. Oh man. My entire life for the rest of my life will be before I went through heart failure and after I went through heart failure, because even though I did not die and even though I didn't have like a heart attack, um, I very much so feel like I did die and like came back new in just every sense of the word. So I was actually, it's been exactly a year right now. So I went into the hospital March 1st and came out March 17th. So when you think about today being March, what is it, 23rd, it's not been much longer than a year. And I actually just got a healthy
Okay.
diagnosis on Wednesday from my cardiologist and clearance to carry on my life as normal. And yeah. So, okay. I had the flu. I was not feeling good. I had a cold. This started the beginning of February. I could not really get rid of it. Cough, very similar to like how I'm feeling right now. But I didn't really take it very seriously. And um, much different from this time around. The minute I got sick, I started, vitamin C, vitamins, echinacea, tea. I'd sat myself down and was like, I'm sorry, I can't meet with you. I need to lay down. I need to rest. I need to honor my body. Last year, it was like, nope, we've got photo shoots, we've got things to do. Like, let's keep going. So here I am continuing to go, not really like shaking this like cold thing or whatever. About 2 weeks in, I'm like now coughing, um, kind of like a bronchial bronchitis stuff with a really terrible sore throat. I go to urgent care. They're like, you have a virus. And I'm like, oh, okay. Thinking that I had like strep throat or something. Fast forward like another week and a half of these symptoms. And now I'm just feeling like I'm dying, like feeling so awful. Long story short, I'd gone to urgent care several times, and then that escalated to the emergency room and having to get, fluids put back in me because I'd stopped eating for a couple days. My body hurt so bad. I had such bad inflammation. My flu virus ended up turning into myocarditis and pericarditis, which is inflammation of the heart and inflammation of the heart lining. The flu virus ended up in my heart and it took me into heart failure. On top of that, I also had walking pneumonia. So that's where that crazy cough and stuff was going on. I woke up on March 1st of last year with what I thought was a flu that was being treated. I went to take a nap because my husband and I were getting on an airplane to go fly and speak at a conference. He went to go get a haircut. He came back and he was like, "Are you ready to go to the airport?" And I looked at him with tears in my eyes after coming down the stairs from a nap and my body like seizing up on me. I was just like, I don't know what's wrong, but I'm not getting on an airplane. Now, we had already been paid to speak at this conference a significant amount of money. And we had already bought these tickets and we had booked hotel, and we were supposed to open this event. And so it was like a pretty big deal and we needed to be there. And something inside of me was like, no, this is not a normal behavior for me. I am like, I give you my word, I'm showing up. I mean, I'm not feeling great right now and I'm on this podcast. So I don't know what stopped me from getting on the airplane. Like, even to this day, I ask myself, why didn't you get on the plane? Because that's just not something that I wouldn't do. But there was like this prompting inside of me that was just like, no. And I have to say, like, it has to have been like the spirit that just that nowhere inside of you that's just like, no. Had I gotten on that plane, I was in heart failure at the time. I didn't know. My heart was beating 227 beats per minute. And at resting, so an average resting heartbeat is between 60 to 100 beats per minute. Resting at rest. At rest, my heartbeat was 227. My blood pressure was
Yeah, it's
75
non-existent.
over 52. 52 is like, there's nothing happening.
Yeah, it's non-existent.
So if you think about that, my heart is in overtime trying to pump blood that is not there. That's what was happening at the time, on top of my heart being inflamed. And the sac that protects your heart was also inflamed. So now my heart is like bigger than the case that holds it. So the amount of pain I was feeling was insane. We went to the chiropractor first, which is probably really crazy, but I had the week before, I had my atlas was out of place and I had a rib out of place. So the pain had felt really similar. It wasn't like heart attack pain. It was back pain that I was experiencing. And so we came to find out that was coming from my lungs being filled with fluid, and the pressure of my heart being so inflamed that they were like almost pressing up against each other. So the chiropractor sent me to the hospital. Get to the hospital, I'm there for a couple hours, and they're like, we don't exactly know what's wrong with you, but we're going to admit you. I'm in the hospital for 24 hours, and then I start to decline. And for 6 days, I was in intensive care. I lost a tremendous amount of blood that they still don't really have an answer for. I had to have 2 blood transfusions. I was put on the transplant list because they thought that I was going to need one. And I was asked to prepare like a last will and testament. So it was pretty serious and very scary. Around day 6 or 7, my body started to kind of heal itself. And then 7 to 17, so the last 10 days I was there, my body just started to repair itself. And I ended up walking out of the hospital on the 17th, going back the next week and being told that my heart was back to normal. So the heart functions at 55 to 65%. Much like all of our other organs, we don't use all of it, but that's like a healthy, thriving, high functioning heart. When I went into heart failure, my heart was functioning at 27%. So anything below 30 is generally like death. And so over the last year, I've had to have several echocardiograms and several stress tests. And when you go through heart failure, you don't get your diagnosis until a year later. It's a way for them to guarantee that there's not a genetic issue, because heart failure can go either way. It can be congestive, or it can be it can be acute or chronic. So I had congestive heart failure. So you can have an acute case or a chronic case. Acute case means that it was like a once in a lifetime situation. It was a fluke. It would likely not ever happen again. And a chronic case would mean that I need to learn how to live with a heart disease for the rest of my life. And so over the course of the year, they push you through like a series of tests. And if you can pass all 4 tests every time, then they'll give you your diagnosis. But if you have any test that you fail over the course of the year, then you're considered a chronic case, and then you have to figure out what your next steps are going to be. And so over the last year, I've been going through kind of heart recovery. And then I got my acute diagnosis on Wednesday, and I have a healthy heart. My percentage was 64.1 out of 65. So I am back to normal, and I am thriving, thank God. And yeah, that is what happened last year. And on top of the heart failure, I ended up getting reactive arthritis. And so I dealt with that also for a year, and I was on steroids for 9 months, which is really scary because you're only supposed to be on steroids for 2 weeks. So it was a really, really tough year and a very humbling year. But God, I can't even get into those lessons. Those lessons were lessons that I would go through it all over again to have the relationship with God that I have. Because the confidence that I have in God right now, these are things that you hear about, but it's rare that you get to experience it. And so I've seen God work a miracle in my life in so many areas, but with my physical body, I was telling my husband today, like, the numbers don't lie. It doesn't matter like how I feel. like at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. And what I see is God taking someone who was dead and bringing them back to life. And not only bringing them back to life, but restoring them to a better life than they were living before. And so that's a God
Girl,
confidence you
you
can't
could
pay
preach a
for.
sermon,
And I'm
okay?
super thankful for
That you are a
it.
living, walking, breathing sermon. Do you understand what I'm saying? Um, because we hear that God can do amazing things and great things, and we kind of believe that on the surface, but when you live through it, it's something else. When you have experienced God's power at work in your life, then it's like no one can say anything to me about anything. I'm a check with God because God is always rocking with me because He's brought me to this thing. He's brought me through this thing. Do you feel this overwhelming desire or like push to always be encouraging people and like their relationship with God as a result of this?
I have a lot of friends who believe a lot of different things. And so I don't push my faith on people. What I do feel though is that I'm not going to be quiet about who I am and who is responsible for me. What I also feel responsible to is to it's very rare that you get a second chance at life. So when I got sick, I woke up to like 326 text messages. I logged into Facebook and there was like a GoFundMe account, and there were hundreds upon hundreds of people praying for me. And when I was well enough to kind of see what was being said online, I felt like I was reading like eulogies. Like I literally felt like I was reading what people would say about me if I were gone. And I had a lot of time to really sit with that. And what I learned by reading those things was that we had had a tremendous impact on people's lives. I had had a tremendous impact on people's lives. And that my life was not in vain, but it also made me think about all of the things that I had put off doing or wanted to do. And it made me ask myself, like, why? Like, why was I waiting? And so, more than anything, I feel that I owe it to God to be a good steward of my life, but also my time. And I owe it to the people around me to remind them that, like, money is amazing and it's wonderful and it provides a comfort and life that we, wouldn't have otherwise. There are a lot of things that make us happy, but peace and joy cannot be purchased, but they're all gifts that God has given us. And when you don't have peace and joy, you cannot function in life. And our time is the most valuable, like, it's the most valuable thing we have, like currency. Like, money comes and goes and it exchanges hands, and happiness is an up and down thing, but time, like every minute, is gone. Once it's like lived in, it's done. Like you're not getting that back. And I just really understand like how precious time is. And I just think like as people, we are so responsible in how we steward our time and how we use our time and how we invest our time and how we share our time with the world. And so it just has made me more intentional about living and encouraging those around me to live very intentionally too. So that's a very long-winded response, but it just has taught me like such value for my life and also for my body, and just the miraculous things that our bodies can do if we treat them well. And if we're prepared for the thing before the thing happens. I was already healthy, and so it was very easy, or easier, let me say, for my body to recover and to bounce back. But had I not been, that could have been a different situation. And the week that I was in the hospital, three other people came in with the same symptoms as me, and they did not walk out of the hospital. And so I remember like walking out of the hospital and crying because I understood that like that was not how my story was supposed to end, but it was like that grace that allowed
I
for it to be
mean,
different. And you just
your
can't come through something
your
like
life. I
that and
start I
live the
started
same
this
way.
out by
You
saying like
just
I'm
can't.
such a fan of you, and I just couldn't put it into words. I'm not really sure why because I am not a photographer. I cannot take a good picture. It is so funny. They make fun of me on vacation. They're like, "Don't give it to courage." I mean, it really is. It's like super comical. Like, "Oh, should have cut your head off." So that wasn't the draw, and I didn't know what it was, but I think I have it now. It's that your life, like the way you live your life, the things that you've been through, the way that you've responded to them, the things, how you lived your life before, and the motivation behind the things that you created and the impact and the pouring out. Your life is worship. And I think that I think that's rare. It is sad as a woman of faith to say it, to admit it. But I think that's what the draw is that it is amazing to see you living out God's purpose for your life in a way that is authentic and inspiring without it being a production. I don't know how to put it into words, but everything that you're saying, your life is worship. How you give back, why you're giving back. It's not just like, oh, let me check this off my to-do list. It's just a part of who you are. It's just ingrained. Living a way that gives light and shines light on the grace of God that is available. It's a testament of your faith. It's a testament of God's greatness. This thing that you've been through, girl, that's like the craziest, most made up sounding insane thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just sounds insane. It just doesn't make any sense. And for you to have this attitude before you went into it, because honestly, I've thought about this a lot, because that was my area of anxiety for a very long time. My cousin was diagnosed with cancer, and we prayed for him. He was young, and he passed away, and I was devastated. And it was after that where I started to feel like, well, anything can happen to me at any time. And it was true before he got sick, right? It was true that anything could happen to me at any time. It was true before he got sick. But after he got sick, and we're the same generation, we were only 2 years apart. After he passed, it was more of a reality. Like, no, this does happen to us. It does happen to people our age who are relatively healthy, that some horrible sickness could happen to you and you could die or have to live through it or whatever. And so that health thing caused me such anxiety and stress. You just wouldn't believe that it caused me actual physical problems. I would go to bed thinking about waking up sick. I would just think about, like, how long was he sick before he knew he was sick? And that could be me. And if you walk around like that, feeling that way, that will drive you insane. It will, and it did drove me into depression. I mean, it was just this anxiety, and I developed, some things that I've overcome, like IBS. I dealt with IBS, and I dealt with inflammation of my chest wall as a result of, like, stress and anxiety. But I just the anxiety of thinking about getting sick, not just anything horrible, but as it specifically relates to illness. And so I initially, yes, yes, and I couldn't get from up under it for such a long time.
Basically thought
and
yourself
so
sick.
when I heard you sharing your story,
yeah.
I was like, this is the kind of craziness that I'm afraid of. Like, this is it right here. See, she's proof. But the way you share it, and the faith that you had before and the faith that you have now, it is not one that leads me back to a place of panic. It is one that confirms where I am right now, which is, no matter what hell comes, God is with me, right? Like, no matter what hell comes my way, God is with me in that. And he has a purpose for you, even in those things that we're running from. And the truth is, we say we want to have this great life. We want to have this great story. But the things that make stories great are the very things that we run from. If nothing ever happened to you, if you were raised by both your parents and you had a perfect life and your perfect little husband, like, nobody's inspired by that. Right. I mean, that's just, nobody cares. That is not going to inspire anyone. But the stories that we love, the ones that we go to the movies to see, the books that we read, everything that excites us is a story where somebody that's right, they had to fight for something. That's the thing that makes the story great. And that's the thing that inspires people. but it's also for me
The
the
overcoming.
very thing that I ran from. And so I just love your response to it. That's what it is. That's going to be my thing for you. When I tell somebody else about you, when they're like, "Oh, you seem to really like her," I'm going to say, "Girl, her life is worship. You can just sit back and say, oh, look at that worship in real life." I think a lot of times we think that worship is confined to Sunday morning or worship music or church music or whatever, but our life, if we lived our life in worship to God, and that is what you're talking about. Girl, I'm gonna get a t-shirt. I heart Latasha.
Well, you definitely brought me to tears. Oh my gosh, like you made me cry because my deepest desire is to honor God in everything that I do, even more so than before. Um, I feel like we were talking about this the other day, like being in debt to God and how it can very easily turn into like a really negative thing of shame and, just really dumb stuff. Like when people feel like they owe God, so they're trying to be perfect. But then there's this indebtedness to God where you're like, I love you so much. And if you never did anything else for me again, I have so much more to thank you for than to ask you for. And I just want to live a life that Hillsong, I feel like, does it best. Like they said it best. Taya said it in the Let Hope Rise movie or whatever. She said their job every Sunday is to bring the attention on them so they can turn the attention back to God. And so many times, like people know Hillsong, but they don't know who any of the people are that are behind the instruments, that are the
Yes.
singers. I mean, if you really follow music and you're into that, you do. But if you don't and you're a believer and you like, do praise. I mean, we all do praise and worship to Hillsong songs or even Elevation, for example, since we're talking about Charlotte. Like, we don't know the names of those people unless you like are a part of the church or, you make it your business to know. What you know is that music moves you in a way that makes you feel close to God or it like connects to your spirit in such a way. And I feel like my job on earth is to bring attention to myself so that I can turn the attention back to him. And even more so now than ever, like I have I have been able to I've been interviewed on many platforms and I've been able to share my story with so many people. And I think before, I may have gotten something from that, some kind of validation that made me feel like I was somebody. But now, like, my heart is just so tuned to God. Like, I am so desperate for like the things that He wants from me, and just creating a space for people to see that like God is like real, for real, for real, for real, for real. Like even my doctors are, they looked at me, like my hematologist and my cardiologist, and like they're just baffled. Like they are like, I don't know. They don't have answers for any of it. It doesn't make sense how I recovered so quickly, why I have no signs, not a single sign of any kind of situation that took place. Like my doctor said, there is no trace of heart failure in my heart. There's always a little scar, always a little something that shows that your body has gone through trauma, but there's nothing there that would indicate that anything happened. And I had the year from hell, and I know exactly why, and I know exactly who. And like, I just can get so like, I'm sorry, I can get really passionate and really excited about this, but it's an honor to hear you say that because it's my heart's greatest and deepest desire. I feel like my indebtedness to God is to live the very best life that I can, but also live a life that is in service to other people. Um, and so I am thankful that those were things that I was always already doing, but I'm excited to like really like intentionally like lean in and really dig in and see where I can do more because like you said, everybody just wants to feel like they belong somewhere. Like the Me Too movement, it kicked off because women want to feel like they're not alone. Like people want to feel like they're
Girl,
not alone.
it
Like
is so
people want
true.
to
And I
be able to
just
say
want to
Me
say
Too
to
about
everyone that
anything
that
and know
really
that
is what
somebody's
the
going to listen
Christian
to
life
them
is
and hear
about.
them.
It
And
is not
so
about pushing
you just
your
gave me
agenda
like the
or beating
biggest
people over
compliment
the
of
head
my
with the
life.
Bible. It is
So
about
thank you.
being the light, not talking about it. Be it, share it, show it, live it out. You don't need to convince me that God is real. because you're living it out, right? You don't need to try and show me this and make me believe whatever, whatever. You are living it out. I can see God's power at work in your life. There's no other way to explain it. It's just like you said, it is nothing short of an absolute modern day miracle. And listen, that's exactly what we should be doing. We should be living our life like that. One of my favorite books, The Pursuit of God. Have you read that by A.W. Tozer?
That's what I'm
It's
calling it.
girl, this book is so good. I read it every year since the first year that I read it, and it reads really old. Like the
I
language is
have
really old, but it's
no, but
such
I've
a
heard
relevant
about it and it's on my
thing.
list.
And in the preface, the last sentence of the preface is, others before me have gone much farther into these holy mysteries than I have done. But if my fire is not large, it is yet real, and there may be those who can light their candle at its flame. I am telling you that the fire that you have, the fire and the way that you live out your life, is one where others will be lighting their candle by it. And I think that's, I mean, it just honestly leaves me speechless. I don't know what to say or how else to express it. But I am without question inspired, and not just in your hustle. I mean, I love listen. I love someone who's going to do the work. Let's work, 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 work. I love it, but I'm inspired to honestly like ask myself, is my life worship? You know, am I living a life where others can see the Christ in me, that I'm just living out my truth, living out the truth of God in my life and how I speak and how I respond to things, because everybody's dealing with something. Everybody goes through something. I say the struggle is real, but it ain't free. Everybody's got a struggle, right? But am I responding to my negative situations or whatever? Am I responding in a way that reflects the faith that I say I have when things are going well? You know, and you are a woman who has said
Right.
like so many examples of how, you know, your faith just directs your steps. And I think that that's amazing. I mean, girl, this is why I'm going to wear a t-shirt that says I heart Latasha. This is why. So this is why. I'm so glad that you decided, that you said yes. I'm glad that I asked,
So much.
because you were my first ask. You were the first one. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm like, go big or go home. That's what it was, because I've wanted to do interviews for a while. And I keep thinking, well, you know, my numbers are so low. People are going to be like, girl, I am not coming for your 5 little listeners. You know, like people are going to tell me no. But I was so inspired. I was like, oh, she going to have to tell me no. Like if she say no. Yes. Yes.
But what if those five listeners, what if like one of them needed to hear this? Wouldn't it be worth it?
Yes.
You know? And
Yes.
I just feel like who cares about the numbers?
Yes.
Like it's like
Right?
you just don't know. Like you said, like you don't know whose
I
candle you're
have two
lighting. So I
questions that
say if you
I
want to do
ask
interviews, you do
everyone that I
interviews and God will
interview.
send the right
And
people
so I'm going to
that will
ask them to
show
you
up
as well.
understanding the importance of the power of just
So
one.
the title,
It
our
only takes
podcast
one,
is Courageous Living
you
Podcast.
know?
And so I want you to tell me, what does courageous living mean to you?
Okay. I think that courageous living is someone told me the other day that our highest form of like worship is when you lament and when you invite God into the process. So I feel like courageous living is inviting God into every process. Like it's choosing to like wake up when you feel like it, when you hate it, when you aren't feeling it, when life is good, when things are bad, and deciding to press forward no matter what the circumstances is, no matter how it looks from the outside, no matter how you feel on the inside. It's like having enough hope and believing enough in yourself to know that there is going to be the promised land on the other side. It doesn't matter if you wandered for 40 years. It doesn't matter if God's like, yo, you don't understand how blessed you are. I was sending this manna, whatever. It doesn't matter the mistakes that you've made. I think it's just choosing, no matter the storm or no matter the season of life, to keep moving forward, even if it's minute by minute or second by second. Like, seriously, because some days are a second by second day. Some day you don't know if you're doing well minute to minute. But I think just knowing that your life is not your own and that you pressing is not just for you. It's for the people around you who are watching, who
what is the
need
most
you
courageous
to
thing
make
you've
it to
ever
the other
done?
side.
Not the most
I think
courageous thing
that's
you've
the
ever lived
highest
through,
form of
because you didn't
courageous
choose
living.
heart failure,
Choosing
right?
to
So
go
not
when you
that.
don't feel
But the
like
most
it, or when
courageous
you
thing,
feel like
like
you
you
can't keep
said,
going.
I'm going to do this. What is that?
Um, I think forgiving people is probably the most courageous thing I've ever done. It's really easy to want to hang on to past hurts and want to harbor those feelings when you feel like you've been done wrong. And I've had to forgive a lot of people, probably from birth till now. But allowing myself to let those things go and to understand that despite my circumstances or despite how things might look, all of it was intentional and on purpose, and that those things or those situations shaped me. They didn't take away from me. Um, I think that has been the most courageous thing. It's not easy to decide to let something go. And sometimes I think that we find comfort in harboring our unhappiness or our frustrations with people. But I think there's so much freedom and courage in saying, you know what, you were not a happy person, or you were going through, or you did the best that you could. And I'm going to believe that your intention was not to hurt me, or that you tried to work through the situation the best way you knew how at the time. And unfortunately, I became victim of actions versus owning those actions as something that someone intended to hurt me. And even if they did intend it to hurt me, I believe that forgiveness allows for a clean slate in some
That is
cases,
great that you
to
said
move
that.
forward and
There
for people to
are
redeem themselves.
5
So for
principles for
me in my
courageous living
life,
that we
I've
talked
found that
about on the
forgiveness
podcast.
in a lot of
And
different
one of
areas,
them
especially in
is
the
the
last
power
season
of
of life,
forgiveness. That,
has been the most
forgiveness
courageous
really
things that
is a
I've
choice to let go
courageous
of
thing that
past
I've done.
hurts and past grievances so that you can be set free and move forward. That forgiveness is for you. And it absolutely takes courage to forgive other people, to forgive yourself. To even sometimes forgive God if you've been through something where you felt like God was to blame, and you had to forgive yourself for even thinking those thoughts once you come back, to your right mind. So I will agree with that. I was the queen of holding a grudge. I will pink slip you so quick. You about to get a pink slip. You will not be welcome back here. I wish you the best in all your future endeavors. Have a great life, And so on this
Right.
journey of courageous living, yes, you're the first one to say it, and I agree with you 100%. Forgiveness can sometimes be the most courageous thing a person can do, especially a person like me. So I agree. Thank you so much. Because that person has probably moved on. They're not thinking about you. They're not held up on what they did or what you're thinking. You're the only one sitting around still stewing, unable to move on,
Well,
unable
and
to make
really,
new
honestly,
connections
at the end of the
because you're
day, you're
harboring all
freeing
that stuff. Yeah.
yourself more than anything. So you might as well let it go.
I absolutely love you. I'm so glad that you came on. Thank you so much for sharing your story and just sharing your awesomeness with the Courageous Living community. You
Sure.
are an inspiration. Yeah, you saying yes, pushed me into a place
so
of like craziness. I
I've
was
had
like,
so
hold
much
up.
fun.
She said, yes,
Thank
watch this.
you.
And then I just started asking
Aw.
everybody. I'm like, let me
And
see.
I'm
Are
so
they going to
excited
say
to
yes?
tune in to hear who else you're going to have
Yes.
on in the future.
So
I
all
think
I
this is
needed
going
was
to be
that first
amazing.
yes, and you gave it to me. And that was it. Child. I didn't ask everybody. If I can get a message to them, I'm asking. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much again. Listen, guys, I'm so glad that you tuned in for this episode of the Courageous Living Podcast, where we learn how to embrace courage as a lifestyle. You want to connect to
So
this
excited.
fabulous,
Yay.
inspiring woman? Be sure to check out the show notes. Leave us a message. Let us know what you think. Let us know how her story inspired you. I want to encourage you to go out and exchange your struggles for strength as you embrace courage as a lifestyle. Love y'all.